Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder. And boy, some weeks 1 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah, indeed. Well, if you are returning, welcome back. If you're new, what we usually do is we review stuff, we critique stuff. Usually something new or contemporary, and then something older and classic.
In this case, we ended up with something that's new, something that is aged, if not classic, and
Mhm.
then one that I'm kind of upset with myself that I hadn't seen up to this point. Which? Watch the show.
Yes. Yes, and we got to get to our. Oh, hey, Arcos, good to see you.
Hello, hello.
Yes, okay. Notifications actually worked this time.
Well, mine didn't, but
Oh, yeah.
all right. So, okay, where did my screen with the movie posters go? Don't share my screen just yet. This will
All right.
fix in a moment.
Okay. Good to go.
Just one more second.
Mhm. We're doing it live.
F it, we'll do it live. All right, so
All right. Our first review of the night is
Jellystone.
Jellystone.
Specifically, specifically the episode that they just released, Crisis on Infinite Mirths, which is basically the cast of Jellystone meeting up with a cavalcade of classic Cartoon Network characters.
Yes. And confession time. I've never heard of this show. I didn't know it existed. Because well, I'm not the target demographic.
I don't know who the target demographic of this thing is.
Oh
So,
yeah.
all right. So a little bit of backstory because I tried to watch an episode besides the one we actually reviewed. Emphasis on tried. Um, uh, so this show is basically a mashup of a bunch of classic Hanna-Barbera characters that they otherwise weren't really doing anything with. Um, and Warner Brothers slash Cartoon Network has always had an interesting relationship with their Hanna-Barbera canon because my understanding is that the very origins of Cartoon Network were that that Turner somehow managed to get his hands on the Hanna-Barbera catalog when they went under, and he said, "Well, what now would I do with it?"
Yeah. And Arcos asks, "What's the Yogi Bear abomination?"
Yeah,
Yes.
getting there.
Yeah.
So, uh, and it's like usually the classic Hanna-Barbera stuff is used as fodder for Adult Swim. So you'll have things like C Lab 2021 or whatnot that are just hacked up episodes. You'll have things like Harvey Birdman, which are just they'll bring in a exaggerated, crazy version of these different characters into the show. Um,
Yeah.
but they haven't really. And I was kind of startled to see this. The last time that Yogi Bear and a lot of these characters headlined a show was 1991's Yo Yogi, which I've never subjected myself to an episode of that I can recall, but it was in the same vein as Flintstones Kids and a pup named Scooby Doo. But everyone was at hung out at Jellystone Mall. They were hip teenagers from 1991, as interpreted by animation executives.
Yeah. Oh
And every
boy.
episode they would have some sort of. I don't understand exactly how this was supposed to work, but it's like you were supposed to have like a 3D glasses to understand or to be able to see properly what was happening. And apparently, as a gimmick went, it just miserably failed.
I have a vague recollection of that. Yeah. I have I never watched it, but I kind of recall it.
I recall hearing about that gimmick, but
Yeah.
uh, so let's just say that the canon wasn't in a good place.
Yeah.
And so for HBO Max, well, this has apparently been on for 3 seasons, flying under my radar completely.
Yeah, me too.
I think I was faintly aware. Yeah, I was faintly aware that the show existed because I had seen a clip that. And what I will say about the creators of the show is that they do have a appreciation for the animation that went before them and enjoy references. They had some sort of Space Ghost convention, and I saw a clip with the original voice of Brack as Brack.
Oh, wow.
They had the recently passed voice of Space Ghost come in to reprise his role.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
Rest in peace. Yeah.
yeah, his was a he. Let's see, what was his name again?
Oh, um, Tim or
It just happened last week.
yeah,
George Lowe.
George. Oh, yeah.
He had a voice that I could always pick out of a like anything. It's like, well, if I was watching a commercial, either the voiceover, I'd just perk him and go, "Oh, that's Space Ghost," which just shows you
Yeah.
how distinctive his voice is.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the same reaction with Peter Cullen. Every time I hear him, like, that's Optimus Prime.
But so Jellystone here it's basically a mashup of that whole Hanna-Barbera Saturday morning cartoon canon and they're all living in the town of Jellystone. And the reason I started up an episode and couldn't finish it was I realized exactly what they had done with it. And it's basically my big criticism of a lot of modern writing, which is basically, hey, you millennials, do you have a boring humdrum life? Well, now your cartoon characters do too.
Yeah.
I specifically picked out the highest rated episode to watch, and the premise of the episode is that Yogi has his little buddy Boo Boo, Top Cat has his little buddy Benjamin Ball, and they don't appreciate their friends. So Boo Boo and Ball meet, and they become best friends. And they were treating being best friends so I met somebody. Well, dish, says Yogi.
Oh, jeez.
And it was just very dull, and I could kind of see where the episode was going in advance because like, okay, what's gonna happen is that Yogi and Top Cat mistreat their little buddy sidekicks, and they're gonna go off and be with each other, and they're gonna get jealous, and by the end of the episode it's all gonna go back to normal. And and I wasn't enjoying the moment to moment of it. Like, not that
Yeah.
that's an awful idea for a premise, but still,
Yeah. Yeah.
just the execution wasn't there.
Mm.
And but I picked up that from like little clips I had seen that they did some unusual things with the cast on top of the Cal Arts makeover.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, specifically with like Yogi Bear, I mean, they basically made him like Peter Griffin, only slightly more, only dumber.
He's Patrick Star. That's who he is. He's
Okay.
Patrick Star. That it just hit me right now. Like he's dumb. He's and he's a food monster.
Yeah.
And yet he's also a doctor somehow. None of the episodes or clips I saw actually featured him doctoring, so I don't know.
Yeah.
What I will say about the show is that I get the desire to tweak the characters a little bit because honestly, a lot of those characters aren't necessarily the deepest people. It's like if you're having to make a whole show out of their interactions, you're going to want to come up with some things to differentiate them.
Yeah. Yeah.
They also did some things where they gender bent a few characters, which again, that's very male dominated cast. If you want to have a whole town populated, I'm not going to get upset about Augie Doggy suddenly being Doggy Daddy's daughter.
Yeah.
I'll be mildly unhappy about Jabberjaw suddenly sounding like a brassy comedy woman, but when what everybody remembers about Jabberjaw is the Three Stooges bit.
Oh. Well, yeah, and you also have Huckleberry Hounds, who's the mayor of the town, mayor of Jellystone, sounding like like a gay Matthew McConaughey.
And with the personality of a toned down Mr. Burns combined with the mayor of Townsville from Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah.
Like he's just like vaguely corrupt and lazy. And that is not Huckleberry Hound at all. Like dude was like, that was part of the joke, was that he was how earnest and steadfast he was.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, but to get to the specific episode, um a the town discovers that there's a rift in the space-time continuum. It's just a big hole right outside of the town, and characters from other cartoon universes are popping up. Specifically, we meet who was the first one? Was it
Let's see here. I forget. Let's see here. I think Mojo Jojo. So the first three that showed up were Mojo Jojo from Powerpuff Girls,
right? Yeah.
Beatty from Dexter's Lab, and Billy from Billy and Mandy.
Yeah. And they each tell the specific circumstances for how they got there. The Powerpuff Girls punched Mojo Jojo into another universe, literally,
because they're tired of dealing with him all the time.
Yeah, and then Dexter sent Dee Dee accidentally, quote unquote, to another universe along with the rest of his trash.
Yeah.
And then what was the third one?
Billy kept insisting on watching of all things, a Justice Friends episode that was a minor bit from Dexter's Lab that was recurring.
Oh, yeah. And the Grim Reaper sends him to another universe.
Yep. So it's a classic sort of, weirdly, it's almost a classic superhero crossover where they meet, fight, make up, save the day.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, they ship Mojo Jojo with Cindy the Bear.
Yeah.
Where this version of Cindy Bear is like, you can tell that the show was conceived of probably sometime in 2019 or 2020 because she's the science girl. Like she's the smartest one around, even though because the writers aren't necessarily, they're either writing down to dumb kids or they aren't especially knowledgeable. Their attempts at sounding smart didn't actually sound very smart.
Yeah.
But like the way I'll put it is that she's a STEM sad cat lady. Because like there's no way this version of Yogi Bear is any sort of love interest for anybody.
No. You can barely put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, basically. And again, like I get the desire to give Cindy something besides being in love with Yogi and always trying to get with him.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is it, Chief.
No.
Now, if I ignore that anything I know from a childhood of watching these cartoons and just accept her as a character, it is mildly amusing that her soulmate is a supervillain from another universe.
Yeah.
Arco says, can't wait for gender bent Johnny Bravo to hit on every guy in town and fail miserably while doing exciting activities like buying groceries. He actually was gender bent in one episode. Like some witch turned him into a woman.
Oh.
I don't think I've ever actually seen the episode, but I've heard references to it.
Yeah.
But anyhow, and Arcus also says, never understood why modern writing has lost the ability to understand escapism. Why, yes, my life is humdrum and boring. Why would I also want to watch someone else live the same thing?
Yeah, I don't want to watch. I don't want to watch my favorite characters, doing their taxes.
See, I think you could actually make a good 6-minute Bugs Bunny cartoon out of him trying to avoid taxes. Maybe that sounds more like a Daffy Duck problem to run into.
Yeah, that's more Daffy. Yeah. Why do I have to pay taxes?
Oh no, April 16th.
Yeah, I didn't file.
Quick, well, what can I deduct?
Yeah.
We're sort of undercutting our thing here. Now, from a production standpoint, like I said, this is very CalArts, and what's weird is that when they have like long distance shots, the characters get very undetailed, which is not something you usually expect to see in a 2D cartoon in this year.
Yeah. Uh, which tells me this was very lazily animated.
Or they didn't have a lot of time.
Or yeah, that too.
Like I'm going to be fair, HBO Max. This is probably a rights retainer cartoon deep down, and HBO Max probably didn't throw a lot of resources at them.
Yeah. Bit like the Lord of the Rings animated movie.
Yeah, actually, yeah, probably kind of a similar mindset.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as the actual episode went, it was like okay. It was kind of
Mm.
nice to hear that they brought back the voice actors and actresses where they were still alive. I said, "Wait, why does Dexter sound wrong?" Oh no, I think I heard something about that, and I got sad to hear that once again that his voice actress had passed away a while back.
Yeah. What was her name? Christine Cavanaugh, I think was her name.
That sounds right.
Yeah, she did like she was like Chucky on Rugrats
Oh yeah,
and
and wasn't she also Goslin on Darkwing Duck?
yes, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, great voice actress taken before her time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the person they had in there was just not the same. But that doesn't mean they did a bad job.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, this thing was a big pile of member berries. If you watched Cartoon Network in the late '90s and early 2000s, they, I think the latest they went with the references was like Chowder.
Oh yeah, Chowder. Yeah.
They had some of that in there. They also had some cartoons that just did not last. Like they had like that one Squirrel Guy cartoon that lasted a season and nobody remembers.
Oh yeah.
Like I think it's because the voice actor was the same one as for Billy, so they could bring him in easily. He was like weirdly prominent for like 20 seconds of episode.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then God, what else did they oh yeah, they had the kids next door. The
Oh,
codename
right,
Kids
right,
Next
yeah.
Door. Yeah.
Yes, that's about their cutoff was like 2009 or so, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if she was Simpsons voice actress Soth. I think I know that they recently with the person who had been the voice of Minnie Mouse forever was also Martin and a few other people, and they had to recast him.
Oh yeah.
But and also Slaw says tax avoidance is a Daffy problem. Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny would be the IRS agents auditing him. Could be Porky too if you wanted it to be like about the IRS agents getting like stymied.
Yeah. uh,
But okay, our hypothetical Daffy Duck gets audited episode already sounds better than this was.
yeah.
Animation wise, they did a decent job capturing the look of all the shows that everybody came from. The only
Yeah.
one that really just did not work was Samurai Jack because it was like weirdly like he was too mobile. Like that show was very much about like static images that barely moved and very
Yeah.
minimal animation. So it looked weird seeing him actually like fluidly moving for the few seconds he was around.
Yeah, that was a little odd. Yeah.
But otherwise, like the new characters were visually good. It's just it was kind of interesting to see some. I'll describe this as the animators clearly have an appreciation for the classic cartoons that that preceded them. Not the same level of creator, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
But at least they don't hate it. Like there was no sign in my mind that they actually hated what was going on. So that's sadly a step up from a lot of modern remakes and crossovers.
Yeah, that's true. They didn't. They actually cared about the original source material as opposed to denigrating it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, Crisis on Infinite Mirths. I just happened to see a trailer that someone posted in one of the discords I'm in. Got morbidly curious. Now I know why I've never heard anybody talk about this show.
Yeah. It's just like, eh.
Because I don't think kids would like it because they wouldn't know who the characters were. And I think that the adults who would remember it and would remember the Cartoon Network shows they were crossing over with
Yeah.
would also find it kind of stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a major miss.
Yeah. Well, This movie isn't worth the transition. Navajo Joe and mother effers.
Yeah. Navajo Joe, Navajo Joe. How'd they go?
Navajo Joe.
Navajo Joe, Navajo Joe.
So this was also my fault. So last week we did The Untouchables, which had music by what was his name?
Enrico something. Marconi?
Yep, let's see, Ennio Morricone or
Ennio
Ennio Morricone.
Morricone. Okay.
And I said to myself, I've heard bits of the Navajo Joe soundtrack in other places before, and I could really hear the similarity. Oh, hey, it's a 90-minute movie. You can either stream it on Pluto TV if you're like me and don't have an Amazon Prime subscription, or on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Sidebar, Tubi is a much better service than Pluto TV. Pluto TV is kind of bogged down by the desire to show a lot of live television too. So at least on the Xbox app, whenever I access it, it's always kind of slow.
Oh, yeah.
Hard to navigate. I don't think they actually have at least on that app, they don't have a proper search feature. So I kind of had to know that Navajo Joe is there, and I had to scroll through the Westerns until it came up.
Oh, jeez.
I might have just missed it, but I'm never impressed every time I open that app. So if you're looking for free TVs and movies that are ad supported, Tubi is still the king.
Yeah. Yes, but this movie is not the king.
No. And it's kind of a shame because I think there's a decent concept here. It is and Arco Slot correctly identifies Morricone.
Yes.
At least the music is good. Guided the soundtrack to the good, the bad, and the ugly, among many other movies, including Two Girls, One Cup, the TV show. As we discovered last week when we were looking up his curriculum vitae.
Yeah.
But this one is this is no fistful of dollars.
No, it isn't. Yeah, this is it's very low on the totem pole of spaghetti westerns.
Yeah, it's like a grindhouse western in terms of quality.
Yeah. So the basic plot of the movie, just to get into it,
if we must.
Yes. So Burt Reynolds plays our titular Navajo Joe, and he's tracking down and hunting down this gang of bandits who killed his settlement, and he ends up tracking them to this little town. I can't remember the name of it.
There were two towns in it. They both had Spanish names. Yeah. And basically what's going on with these bandits is that they had been paid to hunt down groups of raiders, but they did too good of a job and they cleared them all out. So now they're just randomly attacking and scalping innocent villages, which, as the sheriff of the town puts it, not exactly what we want you for.
Yeah, but then they the leader of the gang, his name is Duncan. He just like, nah, screw you, sheriff. Bang.
Yeah. And it occurs to me we forgot the very low tension early scene where they see Navajo Joe tailing them, and he takes out a couple of the bandits by ambush.
Yeah, and they're just kind of standing around.
Like you have one guy who's trailing you. He's like, two guys can go up there. We're just going to stand around here and have a quick break and argument where we break in the fact that Duncan is a bastard and possibly a half-breed.
Yeah.
Does this information really come up? Not that I recall.
Not really. Yeah.
I think all it explains is that why he's an angry man who just wants to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
But what this really is, okay, so, and then probably the most interesting subplot of the movie is the other villain, who is the town's doctor, who basically decides that he can make use of these guys because he knows that they're hauling a shipment of cash on a train, uh, and he knows the combination. So
Mhm.
he decides to employ the gang to steal the train, and then he'll show up after the heat has died down, and they'll get a cut.
Yeah, and it's $500,000 in cash, which back then was a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
But unfortunately for them, they had these stage performers, ladies, who
Who might
overheard everything. Yes.
yeah, they heard everything, and one of them saw the doctor, so they're
Yeah.
able to they would be able to expose the scheme. So the most tension-filled part of the movie is one of them ends up getting shot, and she recognizes the doctor as he is treating her.
Yes. Yeah. And then the doctor, like, oh, she didn't make it.
Yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah.
this could be it's kind of a problem where I kind of wish the doctor had been more of a physical threat rather than just being the mastermind, because this is not the sort of movie where the mastermind is actually all that useful.
Yeah. Yeah, and so but the scheme is foiled when Joe shows up and steals the train and then takes it into the town, and of course he the everybody in town finds out that these bandits are on their way to steal the money, and they of course they don't have any guns or any way to defend themselves, so they asked Navajo Joe to help him out, but he's like, I want $1 per everybody here for every bandit he kills.
Which that would also be a good haul.
Yes, it would. Um,
Now, what really struck me as funny about this is that the sheriff seems totally unwilling to help out. He's like, "There's not a gun in town," he says, his gun belt clearly visible in the shot.
yeah. Well, you don't have a couple of shotguns at the police station?
Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's basically an excuse for Joe to go on a tear,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of back and forth. There's one character who I kept expecting to be more interesting, who was the piano player who was with the ladies of the evening, who
Yeah.
I actually thought at first that, wait, did they get Willie Durante in this thing? Because he had the same sort of big nose.
Yeah. I will say the only other actor I recognized, and it took me a while to figure it out, is the character of the Reverend.
Hmm.
The actor's name is Fernando Rey, and he was the bad guy in The French Connection.
Oh man, so a lot of actors slumming in this one.
Yeah. um, yeah, and of course another character we haven't mentioned yet is the housemaid of the doctor and his wife, who's also a Native American, and her name was Estella. And the entire time they're trying to set her up as a love interest for Navajo Joe, but it just never quite happened.
Yeah, it occurs to me that in this general discussion, we haven't actually talked very much about Joe as a character. That's because he really doesn't have one. He's violent, generally clever. He's a Native American, Navajo extraction specifically.
Yeah,
He is good at killing things. He is
and
angry.
he's
Did I already
angry.
mention
Yeah,
that he was angry?
yeah, yeah,
Um, he- his wife was killed
yeah.
and bloodily scalped in the first scene.
Yeah, yeah. That's about it. Don't know any. We don't know why he's called Joe. We don't know.
Yeah,
Like
they do call attention to the fact that it's weird that he's a Navajo guy named Joe. Like, no, not a lot of Navajos with that name, but he refuses to answer it.
yeah, and of course he makes a point that his his people have been living in these hills for generations.
Right. Oh, I'm an American. Oh yeah, where my father lived here. And his father and his father and his father. Where's your father from? Scotland. So who's really American here?
Yeah,
That was probably his best scene.
yeah, yeah. And by the way, in case anyone's wondering if there's any cultural appropriation, Burt Reynolds was actually part Native American. So
But was he specifically Navajo?
I believe he was Cherokee.
Okay, there are some jokes that I'm choosing not to make, considering that how many part Cherokee people there are.
Yeah, yeah. Although I always thought he was part Seminole, but I may have been mistaken.
Well, at the very least, he sort of fit the part. He apparently did not intend to be in this movie. He thought that he was actually going to get a movie directed by the Fistful of Dollars guy.
Sergio Leone.
Yeah, the director's first name is Sergio, and he thought he was getting the good Sergio,
Yeah,
but it was too late for him to back out.
Yeah.
And you can see why, because there's nothing to this movie, unfortunately. There are like some decent action scenes. I'm sure some horses got very hurt in the making of this thing.
Yeah, they didn't care about that kind of thing in those days, especially in Italy.
Yeah, I mean, the two stunts that come to mind is where they club a horse with a log to knock him and the rider down.
Yeah.
And the other one where the bandits throw bolas into the legs of the two horses in a carriage and they fall over.
Yeah. And Sloth says, yeah, it's a fistful of scalps with all the grindhouse movie logic expected. Lovely. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I think the only reason that this movie has any memory is because of that. It has honestly an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like there's outside of the people shouting Navajo Joe, various things, the character does have a leitmotif that keeps playing through the movie.
Yeah.
And it carries so many scenes.
It does. Yeah.
I occasionally watch these movies that just don't quite gel like this, and I go, "Am I the problem? Is this what people expect from westerns? What?"
Yeah. Well, we've watched enough westerns on this show that I think I can safely say no.
Yeah, no, this is just not a good rendition. So, yeah, I would say just go watch one of the Fistful of Dollars movies.
Yeah. And
Really any western with Eastwood.
Yeah, yeah. Or John Wayne.
Yep.
Yeah.
Different flavor.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, this movie wasn't very Superman.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. Speaking of a movie that's elevated by its soundtrack,
Yes.
man, this might sound a little blasphemous, but actually, I have multiple blasphemies to confess in a row here. One, I had somehow never actually seen this movie all the way through. I don't know how I went 40 years without doing that, considering a superhero fan growing up. I remember my dad had mentioned a couple of times that he was unhappy, like a little bit unhappy with it because, well, in the comic books at the time, they said you couldn't change history. And here they have a whole subplot about him changing history.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just never got around to it. The second blasphemy is that I almost wonder if John Williams' soundtrack in this one is better than his Star Wars soundtrack.
Ooh.
It's at least of similar quality, which is saying something.
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly just as iconic as his Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I think I saw the first half of this a couple years back. Okay, so I know that there are a couple of names on this channel that when we bring them up, we tend to get very down on them.
Yeah.
Names like what's his name who directed The Last Jedi?
Rian Johnson.
Yep. And of course, Zack Snyder.
Yes.
And I was being very down on the Snyderverse, and I think he was wanting to show me this movie partially to shut me up because he seemed to think that there would be enough weirdness in it that I would be forced to logically give Man of Steel some slack.
I don't think it worked.
No. Like this movie is delightful.
Yeah.
Review over. Go watch it if you haven't. Go rewatch it if you have.
Yeah. Ooh. But Superman doesn't punch anybody. Yeah, that's the point.
Right, because he doesn't fight. He doesn't deal with anybody who he would actually have to punch.
Yeah.
That's in the next movie where he actually
Yeah.
has powers of his on equal footing to him.
Yes. Yeah.
What I will say is this. Okay, so the movie is very interesting. Looking at a retrospect, like I'm thinking as I'm watching the opening credits with the effects they have while they have like all the names flying out of the screen at you.
Yeah.
Like I was trying to imagine myself being back in 1978 when this came out. Like, you know, I had just seen Star Wars the previous summer. A Superman movie of similar spectacle comes out, and I'm watching it. Man, I would just have my mind so blown watching this thing.
Oh yeah. 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 It was a. I mean, it definitely put superhero movies like I would say legitimize them. In a way that a lot of people wouldn't have expected. Because I mean, at the time, there was the stigma, and there kind of still is a little bit of this stigma that comic books are for kids. It's just
Right.
they're like cartoons. And then this movie comes out and like, oh no, actually, it's not. They're not. They're actually they actually have stories to tell.
Yeah. And I feel like the movie was very aware of this stigma against its own genre. So it's like it spends the first, 40 minutes, hour or so,
Yeah.
establishing who Clark is and why you should care and take him seriously as a character before he ever dons the costume.
Yeah. Yeah, it goes through it goes through all of his origins from like when he was a baby, and he's the last son of Krypton.
Krypton, not
Krypton.
Krypton, Krypton.
Krypton. Yeah. Yes, Jor-El, brilliantly played by Marlon Brando, who gets top billing in the movie.
Yes, despite being it for maybe 15 minutes in total, maybe
Yeah.
15 minutes.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm Marlon Brando. I'll say Krypton the way I want to.
Jeez.
Yeah, like every scene, I say all the Krypton scenes. I was just wondering, how did they pull that off? Because they think like all the Kryptonians had these bright, dazzling costumes that made them almost look angelic. Where it's like
Yeah.
they're catching every stray bit of light and just shining it like a disco ball. But everybody's faces look normal.
Yeah, it's just the costumes must have been made of some kind of material that was able to reflect.
Yeah, it was just kind of amazing in general.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it just goes to show what you could do with practical effects.
Yeah. Like there were very few moments in this that I actually thought looked bad. Like there's one where a young Clark is running alongside of a train. Like that would have been better with CGI probably.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and Sloth says Reeve was a fantastic Superman. He said the standard, which has only been matched by Henry Cavill. I will say Henry Cavill, I think looks like Superman, and I think if he had the right filmmaker and somebody like Richard Donner who actually had an understanding of the character, he would have been a lot better. His Superman would have been right up there with Reeve.
Right. My take on Cavill is that he looked the part. He never was really allowed to play the part, except ironically, a couple of moments in the Joss Whedon cut of Superman, because what do you know, Joss Whedon, comic book nerd, understood Superman a bit better. It's
Yeah.
like some of the scenes he inserted were actually much more Clarky than anything that Snyder ever put to film.
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially when you watch the Snyder cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, that's the other thing that's kind of fun here is that Reeves gives Superman a lot of personality, which
Mhm.
yeah, what's one of the more tiresome comic book debates you'll have is Superman is a flat character, he's boring, he's too powerful, yada 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 yada.
Yeah.
But like this version of Superman is very lively because he has fun playing up how dorky he is as Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Um, you get the pathos of the character where like sure he's super powerful, but he couldn't save his dad from a sudden heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah. Or and you can definitely see even though they really brought that out, the pain he felt of being powerful and not being able to do to do anything but to actually help people. Like I will say that Pa Kent's death in this movie had even though he's not on screen very much, had more emotional impact than his death in Man of Steel.
Yeah, you know what? I also want to put a moratorium on Man of Steel
Okay,
comparisons.
okay, yeah,
It,
yeah,
it is it is
yeah,
the
yeah.
inferior movie. Let's not sully this movie by even pretending they're comparable.
Okay, okay. Yeah, all right, all right. Um,
Now, if we ever do Superman 2, then that's more open to comparison because they have basically the same villain cast.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Both movies have Zod, and speaking of which, they Zod and the other two, they actually were at the beginning of the movie
That
because
feels weird in retrospect.
yeah, and that's because they actually filmed this movie and Superman 2 at the same time. And in fact, I think they filmed a lot of Superman 2 first before they
Hmm.
filmed this one. And then but but then Warner Brother or not Warner Brothers, I think it was the producers. They ended up firing Richard Donner for reasons, and then brought in a new director, and they refilmed a bunch of scenes, much to Reeve and Margot Kidder's dismay.
Right. And yeah, so I know that they have the normal cut of Superman 2 on Max. I don't know if they have the Donner cut.
I looked; they didn't have it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it on Blu-ray, I think.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but
But anyways,
yeah,
back to
yeah.
this movie. Sorry.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so I think one of the great things too of this movie is the first time you see Christopher Reeve in the movie, he's wearing the Superman suit.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And for 1970s spandex, that's a good looking suit.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
And I think they were right to do it that way, like to show his whole origin, so that like by the time that he showed up in this goofy three-color superhero costume, you understood the character. Like you knew what he was about. You knew like they added a lot of grandeur to the character. That's what I kept thinking of was the
Yeah.
word grandeur.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there was a term that you uh hinted at it, the idea of like Superman being like relatable, I think.
Hmm.
Was that what I think that's what you were talking about?
Um, uh, yeah, at the very least, like he had way more personality than Superman often gets when bad writers get him.
Yeah. So Richard Donner had used a term. It was called verisimilitude,
Oh yeah,
and that was his big thing with this movie was verisimilitude.
right. You had to believe that a man can fly.
Yeah. Um, and I think they definitely accomplished that, and I think that was uh, was what made this movie so great and so popular at the time when it came out.
It, it also helped that before this movie came out, so nowadays DC is definitely the Batman company.
Yeah.
It's like so many Batman comic crossovers. Batman gets multiple TV shows. He gets multiple movies. He gets get video games. Um, Even the
Yeah.
Suicide Squad, they rearranged it so that Harley Quinn was like the lead character and she's one of his supporting characters.
Yeah.
That's what Superman was to DC in the 60s and 70s. He was the bread maker.
Yeah.
Because between that, Legion of Superheroes was a spinoff of Superman. Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane could sustain their own comic books for long periods of time.
Wow.
Like just I think how weird that is. That
Yeah.
it's so popular that your non-superhero supporting cast can support ongoing adventures.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be like it'd be like Mary Jane Watson and J. Jonah Jameson having their own comic books.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be like a mini series nowadays, but that's how big Superman was at the time.
Yeah.
Also, the 90s were kind of unusual for not having a Superman movie when you think about it, like going like a live action Superman of some actually no, okay, if you count TV, they had a live action Superman with Lois and Clark. But the
Yeah.
fact that the 90s Superman movie fell through
Yeah.
was kind of unusual.
Oh, you mean the Nicolas Cage one?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, 70s, 80s, 2000s, 2010s, and later this year we're getting another one.
Yeah. Yeah. James Gunn's version of Superman, which crossing my fingers.
Yeah, yeah. So the overall plot of this one is it's like an extended comic book romp.
Yeah.
And the one thing we haven't mentioned yet is Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
You get the impression that like Lex Luthor didn't so much choose his minions because he thought they were good at their jobs, but because he wanted to feel superior.
Yeah. Yeah. One of his minions is Otis, played by Ned Beatty. And there's a whole sequence in there where he's followed by the police, and Luthor has to kill one of the police officers who was following him, and he tells Otis, "Oh, you were followed again." And Otis like, "Oh, it's a lampshade." He's like, "Despite those cat-like reflexes."
Yeah, Lex Luthor in this one is a treat just because of the put downs he can generate. And now this is a version of Lex Luthor that children of the 80s and 90s like us is going to find somewhat unrecognizable because this is before Crisis on Infinite Earths turned him into basically an 80s yuppie.
Yeah. Yeah, or the Superman animated series where he was like just a megalomaniacal mad scientist billionaire type.
Yeah, like this is not a guy with a whole lot of resources. He's just a criminal genius who is kind of a criminal because it seems like he just enjoys the prospect.
Yeah.
He does keep calling himself the world's greatest criminal genius. And like just to bring in some comic book knowledge, this era of Lex Luthor was almost as evil as the Joker, but with a bit less whimsy.
Ooh.
Like just to give you an idea, they did a Superman Spider-Man comic book crossover. In the course of that story, Doc Ock realizes like Dr. Octopus teamed up with Lex Luthor for that comic because they both got put in the same prison. Because this was before they pretended that everybody was like in alternate universes. They just happened to have never run into each other before.
Oh.
But they team up, and the plan is, we're going to create an enormous tsunami that'll. It's been 20 years since I read this, so it was either like wash away the East Coast, I think it was. It's actually oddly similar to this movie. But Doc Ock realized at one point, wait, you're actually going to carry it out? I thought we were just getting the ransom.
Yeah.
And so Doc Ock ends up helping them out because like he's not that evil.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And if I misremembered it, it's been 20 years, but I just distinctly remember that Doc Ock was kind of disturbed by the level of Lex's evil.
Yeah.
So he's very much in keeping with that because his plot here is he's going to redirect a nuclear missile into the San Andreas Fault and cause an earthquake that would literally wash most of California out to sea. And he had bought a whole bunch of useless land along the fault line that was suddenly going to become beachfront property.
Yeah.
it occurs to me that the San Andreas Fault was really on scriptwriters' minds in the 70s and 80s, because that was also the plot to what was it, View to a Kill? What was the Roger Moore James Bond movie with Christopher Walken as the tech genius?
Yeah, A View to a Kill. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. It was the exact same plot, or
yep,
similar. Yeah, idea.
right. Set off the San Andreas Fault. Um, question mark, question mark, question mark. Profit.
Yeah, yeah, profit. Yeah. Well, although I think with A View to a Kill, he was trying to. Walken's character was trying to destroy Silicon Valley.
Right. He was trying to knock out his competition.
Yeah, yeah. Which yes,
But
profit.
yep. Um, and I think this is fairly spoiler safe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, the
Um,
movie's. I mean, the movie's almost 50 years old.
yeah, but again, there's this weird effect where if a movie came out last year, anybody who cared to see it probably saw it. If it's 20 years old, people may not have been aware of it until we bring it up. Although
Yeah,
not that I'm thinking that we're making anybody aware of Superman the movie, but you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
They could have been like me and just never gotten around to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, now, one thing that kind of surprised me watching this, so I had this idea in my head that this movie was very innocent, and it is
Yeah.
in some ways, but in other ways, it is like sweet innocent Superman showing up in a, if not realistic vision of a crime-ridden 1970s city. It's like a rougher version than I was expecting.
Yeah, yeah. It was not quite as what rough as Gotham in the Tim Burton Batman movies,
Hmm.
but yeah, I would say yeah, fairly accurate of New York in the 70s.
Like there was a little bit of adult language. There were some adult situations, like when Miss Tessmacher, well, Lex Luthor's assistant, is pretending to pass out or be pretty injured,
Yeah, yeah,
and she's a very chesty woman, and the police chief goes, "Gentlemen, I think that we need to give her mouth to mouth and vigorous chest compressions."
yeah,
No, 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 hold off. I wouldn't ask my men to do anything I wouldn't do myself.
yeah.
And
Did you notice who that was?
who the
The
police chief was?
Yeah,
No, I
it was
didn't.
it was Larry Hagman
Okay.
from I Dream of Jeannie, and
Oh no.
yeah, and he was in The Eagle Has Landed. He was the American colonel, the incompetent American colonel.
Okay. 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 So I just, yeah, I did not recognize him at all.
Well, it's kind of blink and you'll miss him. Like you
Yeah.
have to really be paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then there's some like naughty language here and there.
Uh, was there also a scene where Superman used his X-ray vision to check out Lois's underwear?
Yes, it's pink.
Yes. It's like, yes, this movie is not sexless, which is also interesting, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah. Yeah, Lois asks her, like, "Well, how big are you? I mean, how tall are you?"
yeah, Margot Kidder as Lois Lane is very interesting here because she is, I think she's also kind of true to the comic books at the time. It's like, 90s Superman the animated series Lois Lane, kind of a girl boss. She's actually pretty competent, and you get the impression that she could last on a dangerous assignment without Superman there if certain things didn't happen.
Yeah.
You can see how she became a top reporter without him around. This
Yes.
version is slightly incompetent.
Yeah. Well, yeah. For one, her spelling is terrible.
Yeah, that's a running gag, is that she's always misspelling things. There's no
Yeah.
Z in Brazier.
Yeah.
I also
But
like.
yeah.
I also wasn't expecting to hear something about a sex orgy in a Superman movie,
Yeah.
like one of the headlines that she had.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, yes, there was like a little something there for the adults too, outside of it just being general quality.
Yeah. 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 keep in mind the movie is rated PG, so I mean it's
Yep.
although
Which just like the Temple of Doom.
yeah, yes. Yeah, the PG-13 rating did not exist at the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would also say that this movie kind of has the sensibilities of a Marvel movie in the sense that there are a lot of a lot of quips and one-liners all throughout.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like yeah, like all of like Lex Luthor's, saying so like all the amount of energy that's needed to generate to get those legs moving.
Yeah, he's great. Uh, they're also very good about setup and payoff. Like they randomly have a pool scene in Lex's lair at one point because they needed the pool later on for him to toss a kryptonite-addled Superman into.
Yeah. 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 Otis brings him his robe and he's still in the pool. Next time wait till I'm out of the pool to give me the robe.
Yeah.
uh,
What's also funny is that you realize that Gene Hackman was not bald. Lex Luthor is usually bald, although he kind of looked
yeah.
like his 30s comic book version, which had red hair.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's then you see the wig on the mannequin, and you're like, okay, this like that is so in keeping with this version of Lex to be that vain, to not
Yeah.
want to show his baldness off.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't show off till the very end when he takes off. He's Lex Luthor, greatest criminal mastermind of our time.
Yeah. But he's also very clever. Like he figures out kryptonite on his own using a little bit of specious logic, but we'll allow it.
Yeah.
And he figures out, and Superman makes the mistake of talking about some of his weaknesses as an interview with Lois.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, you can't see through lead, huh?
Oh. Oh. Well, I think that kind of goes to his naivete.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
But it also, from a script perspective, it explains why Lex knows things.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean the movie still holds up, I think.
Yeah, like the most you can say is that there are a few scenes where you can see the seams in the special effects, like some of the flying shots, like the front and background projection aren't quite seamless.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course they had they sped the frame rate up to make it look like they're moving really fast.
Right, that type of pre-CGI effect. But just things like there's a scene where Superman is saving a bunch of people from the earthquake, and Lois Lane dies in the course of it. And of course, I'd always heard people complaining, "Oh, it's a cop out." Da 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 da.
Yeah.
But watching it this time, I realized that that's it's poetry. It rhymes. Like
Yeah.
before Superman went through the years of training with his dad's ghost, basically,
Yeah.
he couldn't do anything about Pa Kent.
Yeah.
But now he had that ability.
Yeah.
Even though he was forbidden to.
Yeah, but he basically just said nope.
Nope, not letting this one die. Sorry.
No. Yeah.
But just the acting in that scene where Reeves finds her body, there was just
Yeah.
one little where he cradling her and just goes, "Oh."
Yeah.
That just really actually made me tear up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was a sad scene, yeah. And that's one of those I wish I could go back in time and see it for the first time. We'd be like, oh, that's awful. Oh, I can see why he's flying around the earth to go back in time.
Right. And also just to see that scene without knowing the punchline, because that would have actually been really shocking at the time, because Superman, always saves the day, right? It's
Yeah.
watching him fail like that, what that suddenly does is that for any more movies in the series, you now actually have the possibility that he'll fail.
Yeah.
Which ups the stakes quite a bit.
Yeah, and Arco says that Superman 2 is invasion of the Zod people. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as DB said at the beginning of the review, if you haven't seen this movie, watch it, and if you haven't watched it in a while, go back and watch it again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like I regret not seeing it before now. I think there would probably been some point in my 20s where I would have thought I was too good for this thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can understand that.
But people in their 20s aren't known for appreciating sincerity.
Yeah. Now I do have a question. Do you prefer this movie over the Batman '89, or are they about the same?
I think I would put this over Batman 89, actually.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah. Like, so Batman 89 was kind of doing its own thing compared to the comics, where like, this feels like a Silver or Bronze Age Superman ripped off the pages.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're both good movies, but if I had
Yeah.
to
But yeah.
watch one again, it would probably be this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you.
Where's your power ranking?
I grew up with the Batman '89, so I'm slightly biased to that movie. But I mean, I'd probably put the two at about an even playing field.
Yeah,
Um,
they're just trying for very different things.
yeah, and I actually remember seeing on a YouTube video that in the '90s they were actually trying to do a Batman Superman movie with Reeve and Michael Keaton.
Well, I can imagine what would have slowed that down a bit.
Yeah, yeah. It was right around that same time. Yeah.
Poor Christopher Reeves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, well, on that cheery note,
Yep,
I think we've said all we need to say for tonight.
indeed.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it as always. Hit the
Indeed.
like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, ring the bell, and just real quick, Guardian Angel Part 2 is now on Indiegogo. We've got a little over a month left on the campaign, and we're almost at 20 backers. So if you haven't backed it yet, please do. Link is in the description down below. And we'll see you next week. Hey, everybody.
Good night.